All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Todd Pesic, Director of the Center for Healing Across Cultures here at Cleveland State University. We have a wonderful event planned for you all today. But before we even get started, we wanted to honor our very special guests, Martin and his wife, Wingman, to Cleveland State University through the leadership here at our university and campus. And first, Dean Meredith Bond, Dean of the College of Science and Health Professions.
Well, I'd extend my welcome and thank you, Dr. Pesic. This is an exciting opportunity for truly not just cross-cultural presentation and wonderful new music that many of us have not appreciated in the past, but I think across campus collaboration. And so I'd like to also welcome everybody and thank you for your attendance and wish you an exciting afternoon.
Thank you. My name is Greg Sadlick. I'm Dean of the College of Liberal Arts and Social Sciences, and like my colleague, Dr. Bond, I'm very pleased to be here to welcome you on behalf of my college. The Center for Healing Across Cultures has existed now for 8 years, and it's a wonderful collaboration between our colleges, one that we really cherish. The center looks to traditional and historic cultures to find insights into health and healing. And this is a very important part of what we as university do. I mean, we have to always be on the cutting edge of science, of discovery in the scientific, but we also have to be open to the past and to indigenous cultures to learn the secrets that have helped other generations, other cultures. And we live in a world where we're constantly bombarded by knowledge, but not constantly bombarded by wisdom. And anything we can do to make ourselves open to the wisdom of traditional cultures is much appreciated and much welcomed. And I want to congratulate the leaders of our center for doing such a good job in keeping these traditions alive. Thank you and welcome.
All right, can everybody hear me? Well, okay. My name is Martin Klabunde. I'm currently living down in Tucson, Arizona with my wife, or I should say I'm her husband, Wingman Law. And I wanted to give you a little presentation today on music and on what music is. What was the original intention with music and kind of how we got to where we're at now, and take us back again. So let's start off with what is music? Music for me has been my whole life. Since I was a kid, that's all I wanted to do was play, primarily the drum. And as I grew older, what I found was far beyond what I ever thought I would find. So what began as a passion for fun, and really the only thing I wanted to spend my time with, turned into a really deep, meaningful, and purposeful path into life and what it means to be a human being and what it means to be in relationship with other people, with the earth, plants, and with the cosmos. So let's start off with this. What is music? Music is the medicine. We are the doctors, and the world is the patient. Music is an ancient technology that allows us to access the unseen world. It allows us to access the spirit world, to create transformation, negotiate balance, create harmony, work with energy, and bring it back into the physical world. Music speaks to our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual beings. It provides us a direct connection. Music is a bridge between the physical and the metaphysical, the seen and the unseen, the mortal and the immortal. However you want to look at it, whether you're religious, whether you're spiritual, or whether you're not, that doesn't matter. What matters is knowing what music does for us as human beings. It connects us to that part of ourselves that resides in the unseen, in the spiritual, in the metaphysical, and in the immortal. So this is what music has always been used for, a tool to connect us with that part of our being. So as the hour proceeds, I'm going to go through a little illustration of how indigenous cultures have used music in this way, specifically with the Bamana people of West Africa. And then I'm going to bring it back around to how we can use it in the culture that we live in. So music provides us a path of becoming and is a powerful tool for connecting with our cosmic memory. What is that? Our cosmic memory. This is a term I've recently become familiar with and intimate with in the last probably 10 years. I've grew up having this sense of being here before and also of not being here, but having an identity, I remember my own being out of this physical body. And so as I dove deeper into my relationship with music and specifically the drum, these memories started coming back. And I started having very powerful experiences of what we would call out-of-body experiences. But what they really were was memories of who I am before I came into this body. And I started having memories of what I signed up for now in this lifetime. These memories form the foundation of me being in front of you today. Without remembering what I signed up for, I might not have been so obedient to the path. So because I remembered what I'm doing here, what my mission is, what my purpose is, I decided it was best I become very obedient to that path. So whatever distracted me from that path, I chose to ignore. And whatever got me closer to that path, I embraced. Now, within the culture that we live in, that wasn't always supported. For example, when I was young, I just wanted to play music. My parents were horrified that that's all I wanted to do. And as I grew older, that stayed. That's really what I wanted to do. And we had the typical conversation of what are you going to do when you grow up? And it was play music. And they said, well, that's a wonderful hobby, but you should really go to school and pursue a career. And I said, well, why can't I do that? I want to play music. And really, I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska. So back in those days, it was pretty cultureless in Omaha as far as music goes. And so what I knew of was rock bands. So I played in rock bands. And they were even more horrified that that's the path I had chosen. And as I grew older, a lot of that fell. And I started making trips to West Africa and East Africa and seeing the cultures, experiencing the cultures from which the instruments were made, which I'd begun interest in. And I found such a deep connection to what this presentation is about, how music is medicine there. So, R.J. Stewart, he's an author I recently came across, about 4 years ago. He wrote this book called The Spiritual Dimensions of Music. And there's a quote that he says in there, music may one day provide us a path of communication with states of awareness or self-aware beings that we cannot at the present comprehend. When I found this statement in there, it reflected my experiences with playing music. I had also become aware of self-aware beings that I did not understand. And my mind wanted to think that I was making things up or that I had a grand imagination. So I started looking into imagination and what that was. And I remembered when I was a kid and how I had immersed myself in fantasy, or what was labeled fantasy. How I had used my imagination to step into other worlds where I co-created this reality. And sometimes we had imaginary friends. Anybody else in here have imaginary friends? We all did. Most of us did. But were they really imaginary? Our parents always said, yes, of course, they were imaginary. But some of us played with our imaginary friends in these imaginary worlds, and we did imaginary things. But for us, they were all very real. So when I read this and combined it with my experience in playing music and using my imagination, I realized what it was that we were doing. Our imagination was the platform to which we jumped into other dimensions, which we jumped into other realities. And then when I went to West Africa, first, that's where I went, and I saw how music was being used, and I saw how in ceremony, in ritual, this would happen. They would use music to connect to the unseen world. They would use their imagination to also connect. So I began having my own experiences there as well. And I started putting all the pieces together from when I was a child, in my entering into our little fantasy worlds, and my own experiences with the drum, and becoming aware of these self-aware beings that would talk to me and give me messages. And what they would tell me is how to negotiate, how to stay clear on my path, how to stay devoted, and how to avoid distractions. And they always give me positive messages as long as you stay true to yourself, you'll be taken care of. So when I was young, this message came. And if I wouldn't have heard it, listened to it, and believed it, I wouldn't be standing up in front of here today. So if we can remember how to use music for our own spiritual evolution, however you want to call it, whether it's spiritual evolution, emotional evolution, personal development, it doesn't matter. But if we can remember how to use music for this, we will have connected with one of the most powerful forms, tools of communication known to humans. In this way, music is medicine. So a little history. Cosmic sound. Beethoven said, music is a higher revelation than all wisdom or philosophy. And I'm going to take it one step further and say not only is it a higher revelation, it's the origins of all wisdom and philosophy. Music contains the origin of life. It's at the creation of the center of the universe through cosmic vibrations. Everything resonates at a particular frequency, rate, and vibration. So sound, music is sound. Sound is energy. Energy is at the foundation of everything. We're made up of energy. So music can be used to manipulate the vibrations, the rates of oscillation at an atomic level. So in this way, music, sound, directly influences the physical world. Music exists in both the unseen and the seen. It affects the seen through the unseen. It affects the physical through the metaphysical, the spiritual. And it affects the mortal through the immortal. Every culture has a creation story. And every creation story contains this idea. And the idea is this. Music, okay, let me say most creation stories. I can't say every, I haven't seen every one. But most of them contain the idea that music was given to humans by God or the gods, a divine being. And the purpose of music was to negotiate balance. The purpose of music was to impart divine knowledge to human beings from God. So every culture has a sound they use to reflect the divine order of life, the source of all life. For the Hindus, it's Om. For the Buddhists, it's Ah. And for the Sufi, it's Hu. And every culture has an instrument that also reflects this sound. For the Sufi, it's the Nai. It's a flute. For the Hindu, it's called the Sing. It's a horn. For the Tibetan monks use a ragdung, which is also a ceremonial horn. And the Aztecs use a conch. These are just a few, but there's many, many examples. And I put in a little multimedia aspect here so we can listen to it. This is the Sufi flute called a nai. Oops, it was. Here we go. This is the Hindu Sing. Oh. Technology is wonderful sometimes. This is the Tibetan ragdung. And this is the Aztec conch. So these all have something in common, and that is dissonance. They all contain what we call in this culture dissonance. So they might sound out of tune to our ears. They might sound unpleasant. In my experiences, in my travels in East and West Africa, I found that this still occurs. There's a dissonance that they enjoy, and that's also functional. I'll tell you a little story about this. When I was in the first trip I took to Guinea, West Africa, was in 1997. And I was playing djembe in some modern contexts at weddings and naming ceremonies, along with bass guitar and electric guitar and keyboard, but also traditional instruments like balafon and kora. They were mixing them all. And one of the things that was the same no matter where I went is the PA system. The speakers were always blown, always. And to me, they sounded absolutely horrible. And they were just buzzing. You could barely hear any of the melodies anymore because the PAs were just blown so bad. So my friend and I had this, what we thought was a wonderful idea, that on our next trip back, we would bring the man who took care of us a brand new bass amplifier. He played bass. So we spent a significant amount of money on an amplifier, and our next trip back, we took it back with us, and we gave it to him, and he was so happy and so pleased. And that next night, we went to a wedding, and he played, and he turned it all the way up, and he blew it within the first 5 minutes. And we were horrified. We thought, oh my God, we just spent all this money buying it and getting it there and giving it to him. And within 5 minutes, it was totally blown, and he loved it. He never said a thing about it. And it hit me that that's the aesthetic that they're going for. That's what they want. And I also noticed that the women who sang, if given the choice between a microphone and a bullhorn, they chose the bullhorn most of the time. And there it was again, this aesthetic where things were distorted, dissonant, and out of tune, seemingly. And as the years went by, I realized that when I went to East Africa, I started coming into contact with different kinds of instruments. One of them I'll demonstrate, a couple of them here. They're dissonant. They have this buzz to them. So they're created this way. And these instruments were used in ceremony, in ritual. And I began to realize that there was a function to this. And the function is this. It's to distract the mind. It's to allow the mind to let go. It's to detach from this reality and enter another dimension, another reality. That's the function of the distortion, the dissonance, and what we would consider to be things that are not in tune. And of course, there's a cultural ear difference as well. Their tuning scales are different than ours here. But just the fact that they would intentionally distort things, what a lot of Westerners consider really beautiful melodic instruments, they put buzzers on. So we have these kalimbas here that will play. And when I get them imported, they all have buzzers on them. And I sell them, and I take the buzzers off, most of them, because people pick them up here, and they don't like the way they sound. So it's a cultural aesthetic that's also functional. It's used to distort the mind, to detach, to allow the mind to let go. So, back in the day, monk music was temple music. That's primarily what music was used for. And even now, in the villages in East and West Africa, you won't find people playing music for fun. Fun is never a reason to play. There's always a purpose to play music, and fun is always a natural byproduct, but it's never the reason to go and play music. So, music is universal cosmic knowledge. It's a bridge to the cosmos and used to remember our cosmic connection and stay in tune with cosmic changes by shifting our frequencies. So again, music is used to keep us in tune with our being that exists in other dimensions, with our being that exists and is connected to the cosmos. One of the cultures that I'm particularly familiar with is the Bamana people of West Africa. They reside in southern Mali, West Africa. I've spent a significant amount of time over there learning the djembe and the dunans and playing a lot of that music. So music functions in very specific ways over there. Like I was saying, it's never for fun. It's always for a reason. The primary reason is the connection to the spirit worlds. The Bamana, I should say the more traditional Bamana who don't live in the bigger cities but are still in the villages, they use music for this reason. They spend about 80% of their time connecting to the invisible, connecting to the immortal, connecting to the metaphysical, the spirit worlds. So everything they do is done there first. Every action they take in the physical is taken there first, or simultaneously. But the intention is always to go to the invisible and bring it back into the physical. So they have this philosophy that when a community plays music with this intention collectively, that's when the community is healthy and in balance, emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually. They use music to honor their elders, to honor their young people, to honor the people who perform specific functions and roles. I'll go into that a little bit later. They use music to inspire. They have this crazy idea that happiness is very important. They use music to cultivate happiness. How many of you guys have seen West African dance? Anybody in here? It's very, very happy. It's very, very uplifting. It's very off the ground. It's very airy. This is their priority there, is connection, community, happiness, balance. It's used to create harmony and balance. And music is used to create sacred space. So before colonialism, they didn't have churches. Now if you go to West Africa, you'll see there's mosques in the countries that were colonized by Islamic nations, and you'll see there's churches in the countries that were colonized by Christian nations. Before that time, everywhere was church. Everything was sacred. Everything they did was about connection and creating sacred space. They were living in sacred space. One of the instruments that they use is the djembe, which are these instruments here. On my first trip, I documented how they're making the djembes. So these are a couple pictures from that. You can see in the picture on the top left, they just start off with a tree. This is a tree trunk. So how many of you work with wood? So take a look at his form there with the axe. And if you can look closely, you can see that he has flip-flops on. Something I didn't think about until they gave me the axe. It said, "Would you like to make your own drum?" I said, "Yeah, sure, of course." And I took a couple strikes with the axe and gained an immense, tremendous appreciation for what they're doing. So the next step is to get the djembe rough, like in the second picture in the middle, very rough. No, I'm sorry, the next step is on the far right, where he's just creating the division between the bowl and the neck. And then the next step is the rough. And then the final step is what you see down here. There's a master carver who carves the final carvings in the drums. So, the Bamana are known for their djembe music. They're known for their fluidity. They're known for their mastery of time. They're known for their ability to balance and to create harmony. This is called healing, right? So they're known for their ability to heal through music. They weave rhythms together like water flowing briskly down a freshwater stream. The individuals are connected on an unspoken level and maintain a strong connection no matter what. It is as if their molecules are dancing together so that when one shifts position musically, the others adjust without missing a beat. So I've been a musician my whole life. And it wasn't until I started studying West African music that I saw how people speak with music. Over here in this culture, when I learned music, it was reading music. Very intellectual experience. Very difficult for me, personally. It meant learning a system before playing music and then playing music through that system. But over there, they play music just like they talk. It's no different. And they learn to talk when they're very young. So the people who are trained on djembes are trained very young, and they're able to communicate naturally and flowingly. One of the signatures of the Bamana rhythms is that when they play slow, they will always start in what we call 4/4 time. It's a binary time, very straight. And as they speed up, they will shift collectively to a 6/8 or a 12/8 time, which is a ternary rhythm. And so they switch from binary to ternary like that, all at the same time, all intuitively. No one's calling any signals. It just happens. And that really blew me away once I watched this happen enough and saw what was happening and came to understand it. So here's a rhythm called como. This is played by Bamana musicians in Bamako. This recording was made around, I think around 1994. This was not recorded by me, but another person from Germany who also spent time there. Let me get it going again. Specific gender roles, full moon celebrations, weddings, baptisms, funerals, and naming ceremonies. Music is played every day. Every day in the village, you'll hear music being played one time or another. Music is what connects them to each other, to the earth, and to the cosmos. Music is played for the hunter, the blacksmith, the warrior, the teacher, the farmer, the fisher, the healer, and the sorcerer. Age groups have their own rhythms as well. We have elders, children, and women. Music is everything. It's life. This is a little video from a wedding that I recorded and was honored enough to play in as well. In Bamako, Mali, back in, this was in 2002, I believe. So this will give you a little example of some of the fun that they have there with music. And this is at a wedding. So as I was talking, the Bamana culture, the society is structured into different clans. They use what we call in the West a caste. They did. In some places it's still intact. For the most part, it's not so much intact. Or I should say it's changed. It's intact in a different way. So the different groups of this, the castes are called the Namankala. The Namankala, Nama means life energy, Kala means handle. So together it means the handles of power or points of access to the life-giving energy of the universe. So this idea that they're connected to the cosmos and the universe is in their language as well. What these groups do is they provide the necessary tools for sustained living and offer services regarding the invisible realm. The different sections, the different groups of people are the Jelly, which are the musicians, the Noom, which are the blacksmith, the Garanke, which are the leather workers, and the Kasa, which are the farmers. So, in order to be in one of these groups, these groups are something that you're born into. You have to be initiated into them. So it's not something you grow up and think, oh, I'm going to want to be a farmer at the age of 15. It's something that you're born into. And around the age of 11 to 12, they go through initiation. 11 to 14, I should say, depending on the group. And a part of that initiation, in some places, is being sent into the forest for a number of weeks, usually weeks. And what they're there to learn is called Jiridon, which is the science of the trees and the knowledge of nature. So imagine being sent into the forest for 2 or 3 weeks, and you're there to learn the knowledge of nature. Here in this culture, to learn the knowledge of nature, we go to school. And there, the forest is the school. But how is the knowledge transferred? It's transferred through the spirits of the trees, the spirit of nature. So oftentimes when they go into nature, they're there for a significant period of time. And they're there to learn this knowledge. They absorb into nature. They become a part of nature. They connect to the part of themselves that is in nature, that is able to communicate with the trees, that's able to communicate with the animals. This is the way they learn about the trees as kids. This is a rhythm called Soli. It's played in Guinea as a part of male initiation. This was recorded in Guinea. The artist is Famadou Kanote and his ensemble. So I want you to notice how the music breathes. It's different from the music that we have over here. Listen to how it goes up in intensity and lowers in intensity and speed. It goes from slow to fast and then goes back down, all very naturally. So when the young children are there, depending on which section, which clan they're being initiated into, they'll learn about the manipulation of energy. They'll learn about how to negotiate and manipulate energy in such a way that they can use it as a vehicle to hold intention. This is called Daliu. Daliu are compact and concise units of knowledge containing large amounts of concentrated energy and information used for the completion of particular activities. So when I was in Guinea, again, the first year that I went with a friend of mine who had psoriatic arthritis. Anybody know what this is? It's a very crippling disease. His spine was turning into a pole. It was all the vertebrae were forging together. So he was not able to bend his spine like you and I, nor was he able to turn his head, his neck. It was all one piece together. So if he wanted to turn, he would have to turn his body and turn like this. And he was in a lot of pain. And here in this culture, there's no cure for it. He was on kind of a chemo drug called methotrexate, which is all they had available for him at the time, which had really negative side effects. So he was also on 800 grams of milligram 4 times a day, every day, which over the long run, that had a good chance of killing him. So when we were in Guinea, I had this idea that we ought to explore possible solutions to his condition outside of this country. To me, I thought it was a crazy idea, but I thought, who knows? So when I asked about this, they actually asked about what was wrong with him. And I asked if they could help. And the man we were staying with said, yeah, we know what this disease is. We have a name for it here. It's called Klabunde. And there are people who have been cured of this disease, so we can help, yeah. But they told him up front it would be very difficult. So the first thing that we had to do was to go visit the man we were staying with, we call him Papa, to go visit his sister. And she lived out in the village where there was no electricity, no roads there. But we didn't know that at the time. So all we were told was to go buy a chicken. So we went and bought a chicken. And we were told that he was supposed to hold on to the chicken. No one else could pay for it. He had to pay for it. No one else could touch it. He was to hold it the entire trip to go see this healer. And so we went to the market and bought a chicken, and we hopped in a cab with our friend, Moro, which was Papa's son, and we were on our way. And after about a 4-hour drive, with him holding the chicken, of course, and listening to Phil Collins over and over, I'll never forget it. The cab driver knew no English at all, but he knew every single word to the Phil Collins CD, or the cassette that he had in the tape player. So he kept singing the songs the entire way. And I was mystified by this. And so after he dropped us off, which was literally a dead end, then we began to walk. And we walked another 4 hours through the rainforest. We had no idea this is what the day was going to be when we set out to go. So we were exhausted. And on the last probably quarter mile, walking there, I began to feel strange. I began to not hallucinate, but my vision became so focused so that I couldn't see anything other than it was like a tunnel. Everything outside of that tunnel was blurry, but it was like refracted by light is what it looked like. So I had to keep looking down, and I was getting nauseous, very, very nauseous. And it was so intense that I could barely keep going. And I just kept looking at my feet to make sure they were going one by one towards the direction, because I was losing my ability to stay in my body. And as we got close, I looked up, and there was this woman standing there at the head of the trail. And all I saw was this light emanating from her being. And the light was the refracted light I kept seeing out of my peripheral vision. It was the same coming from her being. And as we got closer, she just smiled. And her smile went right through me, as if the phone call had been made and she knew we were on our way. except I knew, logically, that she lived too far out for that to ever happen. So in the physical world, she could not have known we were on our way. There was no messenger sent. There was no phone call made. Yet she was ready and waiting for us. And when we got there, the first thing that she had us do was to go sit in a little gazebo, what we would call a gazebo, and rest. She brought us some tea. And after about 20 minutes, she came back. And my friend was still holding this chicken, who was by now very agitated and would like to leave as quickly as possible. So she came back, and she said that first we had to find out that if he could be healed. So she stated that when my friend put the chicken down, that if the chicken ran away, he could not be healed. But if the chicken stayed, he could be healed. And my linear mind went, oh, we've been set up. The chicken's not going to stay. It's been held for 8 hours by now, and what chicken wants to be held at all in the first place? And so I thought, okay, this is interesting. It's getting kind of crazy and interesting, okay? And so she said, before I do this, I need to take the chicken. So she took the chicken, and she began to create Daliu. I had only read about this idea. I didn't expect to ever see it. So she began to create a concentrated ball of energy in her hand, which appeared as a light, a ball of light, floating in her hand. And then she took that light and she began to do what is called kilisi, secret speech. This is a combination of saliva and prayer, what we would call prayer. So she began to inject saliva into the ball of energy and chant in a language which was not her indigenous language, a different language. And then she rubbed the chicken with the energy. And as she was doing this, she was telling us that what she was doing was combining the energy from nature into the chicken to combine with his energy to create a cocktail that would enable the chicken to have a choice to either stay or go, to bypass the instinct of the animal. And so she put the chicken down, and it stayed. It laid down as if it was paralyzed, but it was still squawking. Its neck was moving, but it didn't go anywhere. And in the meantime, she let the chicken stay there, and she began to tell my friend what needed to be done, what kind of herbs needed to be taken, how they were to be taken, and for how long. So he was supposed to stay there for 1 year from that day and not leave. And he was supposed to get, her sons had gone out to get the leaves from the forest of the particular tree that was needed. And he was supposed to drink the tea, inhale the steam from the tea, and also wrap it up in shea butter and put it on his back every day for a year. And she warned him it would be very difficult and that he would get sick, before he would get better, but that this herb, along with the energy and the knowledge and the wisdom from nature, would expel all the toxins out of his body, and that he would be healed for this disease, and it would never return. The interesting thing about this is that he chose not to stay. He chose to leave. And it told me something else about us and human nature, and how sometimes we're willing to be uncomfortable, then face change and transformation. So that's a little story to go along with Daliu and the power of energy, nature, Jiridon, the knowledge of the science and knowledge of nature and the trees. One of the other groups, the clans, is called the Numu. The Numu are the blacksmith. The blacksmith, their primary role is to negotiate balance. In the physical world, the blacksmith forge iron. But what they're really doing at the same time is they're working with life force energy in the invisible. They use music to communicate more efficiently with the spiritual realms. This is where the energy for the forging comes from. The Numu invented the djembe. The Numu had the idea about this drum. They requested a drum be made for them so that musicians could come and play music at specific times during the forging process. So they knew about the power of music, and they chose to utilize it. So the idea for the djembe came from the blacksmith, the Numu. The form for the djembe came from the mortar and pestle. That was abound before the djembe. But you'll notice the djembe looks very much like a mortar. You guys know what a mortar is? Yes. So I'm going to show you a little bit of a documentary called Dokwaza. This is the last of the African iron masters. Has anybody here seen this? It's a beautiful documentary about how they extract iron from ore, how they get iron from the ground, and what the process is and how it's done, and also how music's involved. I have a short version and a long version. I'm going to show you a portion of the short version. And next time when we do a longer colloquium, we'll show the whole version. It's a really beautiful film.
The success of a smelt depends upon iron ore, fire, charcoal, air, and the human skills and energy that cause these to react together in such a way as to concentrate the metallic iron into a mass called the bloom. Dokwaza knows that success can only be achieved by the right combination of physical and spiritual forces. Magic and prayer, technical knowledge and physical effort are inseparable components of his craft. Early on the first morning, Dokwaza prays and offers beer, calling on God, Jugle, and on his ancestors for aid. Dmagai, a potter, has been making bellows parts. Meanwhile, a neighbor, Haiduk, begins to prepare a sheepskin to make the bags for the bellows. First he uses grit to scrape it clean, then rubs in oil to make it soft and pliable. The sides of the shield are decorated with spikes. These symbolize strength, potency, and achievement. Dokwaza installs a bust of his father, Kawa, on top of the shield. Thus he honors his ancestral line and asserts rightful inheritance of their skills. The bust is given eyes of quartz, hard like the iron to be made in the furnace. After 3.5 days, construction is complete. After working the bellows for a moment, and they will never cease until the smelt is over, 10 hours and 21 minutes later, Dokwaza hands over to his son Heshekit, descends to the lower platform and checks that the charge is well and truly lit. When he returns, dressed as for war, he is accompanied by Badadak, by his nephew Batai, the harpist and second on the bellows, and by a son of Batai. He cuts up magical plants, mixes them with a pinch of ore, and with a prayer inserts them down the tuyur. Dokwaza plays the bellows like drums. Batai strikes up his harp and they sing antiphonally. This is the first time that music has been allowed near the furnace. From now on, it has the essential continuing role of egging on the bellowsman.
So the most significant aspect of that I wanted you to see was the fact that they're using music. And he said that once the music started, it would not stop until the process was over. So they're using the bellows as an instrument. He's playing rhythms on there. And there was a stringed instrument in the back that he was playing as well. Now, this was done in Cameroon, so I don't know the name of the instrument they were using, but if it was done in Mali or Guinea, they would probably be using an instrument that sounds very similar to that. It's called an ngoni, and it's a stringed instrument. It's the precursor to what we know of as the banjo. So, the Bamana, like so many indigenous cultures, use music in deep and meaningful ways. Music is at the core of who they are, what they do, and how they do it. Music is the vehicle for the application of intention sent to the spiritual to be rearranged and manifested back in the physical. The message of music. The message of music, as you see up there, is always peace, harmony, balance, freedom, healing, and awakening. If we can use music to carve a path for ourselves for these intentions, we'll be well on our way to knowing who we are, where we're going, and how we're going to get there. One of the most accessible instruments that we have is the drum. The drum is available to everybody. You don't need to know how to play it professionally. You don't need to know how to get specific sounds and tones, although you can, absolutely. But for us, all that's required is intention, a sincere desire to be of service. The power of the drum, what's it used for? It can develop positive character attributes, patience, discipline, humility, intuition, cultivate wisdom, teach us how to be in the here and now, balance our emotions, move energy, alleviate pain, listen to our inner wisdom, expand awareness, broaden our perceptions, and remember who we are. Before Wingman and I started going on tour, I had started a nonprofit in Tucson, Arizona called the Dambe Project. For 13 years, I taught West African percussion in the schools, K through 12, and I taught adult classes on the weeknights and on the weekends. Had a performance troupe, traveled a little bit with that. And the primarily thing I found very useful about drumming in kids is that they could learn a lot of the things that our schools were trying to teach them, but we're failing at. They learned communication skills so well by getting them in a group and teaching polyrhythms, which are what West African rhythms are, more than one rhythm happening at the same time. They were forced to be present. You can't play this kind of music and space off. It's not possible. You have to be here and now. And I would watch my kids struggle with this, especially my high school kids. They would really be present. They'd end up spacing off, not even know it, and then come back. And I would never talk to them about it. They'd learn it on their own. It was such a powerful teaching methodology because I was not another teacher talking at them, talking down to them. The music was teaching them everything. So all I had to say was, we perform this at the end of the year. That's all I had to say. Because they knew they were going to get up and perform it in front of their peers. And none of them wanted to look like a fool doing it, so they all paid attention, and they all performed as a group. The other thing I told them was that I am never here to manage this classroom. I am here to facilitate the musical experience, but you guys are the ones who play together. You guys are the people who create the magic. Me, I just observe. So it gave them all the power. It was empowering to them. And they always did much further than I had ever thought or expected. The power of music to heal and transform. Another thing that we can do with music is infuse it. We can infuse sound with our intention. And I prefer to use gratitude, compassion, forgiveness, humility, and unconditional love. These are such powerful virtues that they're often so overlooked. Our sense of compassion. When we think of compassion, who do we think of? Name him. Dalai Lama? Anybody? That's what you think of. That's his message, compassion. But we hear about it all the time, but do we really know how to cultivate it? Do we really know what it means? Sometimes compassion ends up looking very different than what we think. Sometimes we get confused between compassion and enabling. That's a really good one. That's a whole nother workshop. But we can infuse music with these virtues, with these intentions. Music is a vehicle. It's energy, packets of energy. And they're big enough to hold our intention as well as the sound. So when we create music that's been infused with this energy, the listener absorbs it. And it bypasses our minds and goes into our inner being. And it blossoms from there. The listener can also be a part of that. While listening to music, you can also be infusing it with your intention. Music has the power to move us out of negative emotional states and into places of opportunity and possibility. That's because when we play music, we create our own story. Since we were, well, for sure 18, we've all been creating our own story, right? Some of us began earlier than that. Before that, it was our parents who created it, the elders in our community, our teachers. They all kind of helped shape and form our story. But once we got to it as an adults, it's up to us. We're the ones who are creating our own story. And music enables us, learning music especially, enables us to jump into a new paradigm that resists mainstream ideologies. It helps us think about the world in a different way. It helps us take action outside of mainstream, if that's in fact where we'd like to exist. And so played in collaboration with pure intention, it can create a potent recipe for inner transformation. Music teaches us to view our world with invisible eyes and hear with invisible ears. It develops our intuition. It allows us to cultivate our inner hearing and our inner seeing. These become very useful, for example, in what we call the dream time. If we have lucid dreams, we're seeing with our inner eyes. We're hearing with our inner ears. We can bring this into our waking, what we call our waking life in the physical world. When you begin to hear with your inner ears and see with your inner eyes, you can actually hear and see the energy behind the words that are being said. You begin to be able to observe your role in interactions and conversations and see what you bring to the conversation beyond what you're saying. And it's a lot. And you can begin to help other people shift into places of freedom and happiness very easily. You can begin to detach from drama or emotional states or negative emotional states, anger, frustration, jealousy. Music is an elixir for the mind. It allows the mind to drop its protective layers and expose what resides deep inside itself, which is what? What resides inside the mind? Anything? What I like to say is the Wizard of Oz is the mind. The Wizard of Oz, throughout the whole movie, was made to appear to be very big and scary. Scared everybody. Everybody was terrified of the Wizard of Oz until the machine came crumbling down and the screen opened, and what was behind the screen was a little man, a little guy, who was also fearful, mostly fearful. This is what resides inside the mind, is the little guy who's mostly fearful. So if we can remember that, next time we feel fear or anxiety, just know that it's just an illusion, just like the little Wizard of Oz. Music can help us get to that place. So, the illuminated musician. He's a messenger, a mediator, and a mirror. His purpose is to create unity, open a portal to sacred spaces and sacred wisdom. The message that he tries to give is always detachment, humility, serenity, compassion, forgiveness, and unconditional love. So next time you listen to music or play, I hope you can see and understand, feel, and melt with what's there. Detach from what you think you know. I like to say, forget what you know. That's the only way we really make room for who we really are and what's really there, beyond the world of the physical, the world of illusions. Got it. These are called adungus. They're from the northern part of Uganda. They're traditionally played by the Acholi people and the Alur. And today they're played by us. They're very simple instruments. They have a wooden sound box, cowskin on both sides. The sound box is actually closed here, so that it's like a bowl, a rectangular bowl. And the sound box is open on the top. So then we have a wooden spine, and the strings are inserted through holes that are drilled through the skin and the wooden spine, and attached to little dowels so they don't come up. And then twisted around the pegs, and there we have it. So if I were to loosen all these up, the neck would just come out. So the neck is only held in by the strings. And this is handy for traveling. If we have big ones that need to be taken apart or whatever, we can just take them apart. All the music we're going to play is original, and it's off of these songs occur on the first 4 or 5 songs occur on 2 CDs over there. The first one's called From the Heart, and that was created with just me playing all the instruments, and I mixed it with djembe, dununs, some East African percussion, and some spoken words, some prayers, some Native American prayers, and also there's some of the stuff is in Kiswahili, some in Spanish, some in French, and some in English. And then we started performing, just the two of us. And so over the last Christmas break, we decided to make another CD that was more representative of what you're going to hear today. So it's those songs again, but without all the percussion, without the spoken word, just the 2 instruments and some Tibetan bowls and rain sticks. Much more simple, much more representative of what you're going to hear now. And that CD is called Live from the Heart, or Live from the Heart, whichever you prefer. This one's called Amor. This next one's called Tranquility. And don't forget what I was talking about in the talk, about infusing this music. As a listener, you're still participatory. None of our concerts are there's a separation. We always hope that you join us in infusing this music with pure intention. The best way to do this is to listen to the music from your heart, from this area of your body, instead of from your ears. Your ears already know what to do, more than we would like sometimes, in their own way. But your heart, it's really your brain. It's really where we can think out of, feel out of, connect to. So listen from here and allow the music. Allow yourself to melt with the music. This one's called Tranquility. So this next one's called Koba. And it's the first song that ever came through me on this instrument. You know, I've been a drummer all my life. And I tried to play guitar many times. I've owned 3. And I can play some chords. But then when it comes time to actually switch chords, my fingers just won't do it. They're so callous from playing drums, you'd think they'd be good for the guitar. But they just won't do it. I'm not made for the guitar. So in my search for stringed instruments, I went to Uganda. And I found these beautiful instruments. And the first one I actually played was this one, and I'll tell you another story. But eventually I got this one, this adungu. And I got it at the end of one of my trips. I think I had 2 days left before I had to fly back. So I didn't have much time to really learn traditional songs, although I know a couple now. But at the time, I just asked my friend, who's pretty much a master at these instruments, how to play it. And he said, I'll teach you a couple chords, but that's really all you have time for. Then go home and make stuff up. And I went, oh, okay. So he taught me a couple chords, taught me this one. So this is in the key of G. So that's G. Then he taught me this one, kind of a C. And then he taught me this one, D. So when I first got this instrument, that's all I knew, was those 3. And I would play at night with my lights turned off. So, because I found what happened when I played in the light, I would go like this. I was so fixated on what my fingers were doing with the strings that nothing could really flow. So I decided to turn the lights off and just play and let my fingers find their own way around the strings. And eventually, I thought that might be the best thing anyway. And so the first thing that came through me, really within a couple days, was this, and I named it Koba. And on the first CD, it's the laughing song, because we don't sing, we just laugh throughout the entire song. And by the end of the song, you're laughing too. Manitoba. This last one's called Walk in Beauty. And on the first CD, this has a Native American prayer called Walk in Beauty in spoken word over the top of it. Thank you. These next couple songs are off a different CD called Music for Yoga and Massage. And of course, other things like relaxing. All right, you guys. So we're gonna shift a little bit into a little djembe drumming. So these drums are all handmade. Both the one in the front here, mine, is made in Mali. And I don't know if you remember in the video of the wedding that I showed you, you saw me in there, right? The person sitting on my left, the big guy, he was my teacher in Mali. And this is the drum he gave me. And he just passed away. I heard last year he just passed away. So that's what I have from him, and I'll always have it. His name was Madou Traoré. He was a really kind human being and a really great djembe player too. So this we'll do some rhythms based on traditional rhythms with our own take on them as well. This first one is called Cuckoo. It is a fishing rhythm. And obviously I can't talk and do all this. So, and the second one is called Soli, and it's a rhythm that's part of male initiation. So we're going to change it a little bit. This is a calypso, sort of a rhythm. This is dedicated to the first teacher I had in Seattle, Washington, who taught me a lot about myself and learning how to play this drum. So his name is Carol.